And when Hezbollah say they haven't yet decided to enter the war, what do you think would tip them over when it came to getting involved?
My sense is that at this point in time, Hezbollah doesn't want to enter a war with Israel. And that probably means that Iran, which is the principal backer of Hezbollah and uses Hezbollah as a strategic instrument or a strategic weapon in its own rivalry with Israel, that Iran does not want a war, and also that Israel doesn't want a war. So unless Iranian calculations shift or Israeli calculations shift, then I don't think Hezbollah will actually get drawn into a war or launch one or initiate large-scale activity on the Lebanese front.
Yeah, a few days ago, a spokesperson for Hezbollah said that it would all depend on Israel's response to the attack last Saturday. Do you think that could still be the case?
Well, that's the thing, in fact, that there's an assumption here that once Israel launches its ground offensive inside the Gaza Strip, that will be over within, days or a few weeks. But I think that if it ends up as an extended operation or one that tries to force hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees into Egyptian territory, something that, of course, Egypt itself will resist, we may be looking at a more protracted conflict, one which becomes far more significant in terms of the human toll among Palestinian civilians. So whatever things look like at the moment in relation to Hezbollah's calculations and those of Israel vis-a-vis Hezbollah, that may start to shift, say, in a few weeks' time, if this conflict, this kind of large-scale conflict enters a second month. Of course, we'll have to revisit. So I just want to point out that the assumption that somehow the Israeli ground operation could be surgical or swift or precise, as we saw the Israeli defense minister call it earlier in your program, I think this is misleading. This is going to be something that can only be horrifically messy, horrifically brutal. And therefore, how Hezbollah or Arab states or Iran respond may shift after a while.
And I want to talk to you as well about the Palestinians and the negotiations you were involved in the past. What has happened, do you think, to allow Hamas to, sort of acquire this power now? I mean, is it something to do with the democratic legitimacy or otherwise of the Palestinian Authority?
I mean, that's a massive question. The truth is, if we look back over the past 30 years, everyone involved here is guilty of an abdication of responsibility, the way in which the Palestinian leadership under Arafat conducted its negotiations and used violence at various times, the way Israel continued to colonize the occupied Palestinian territories every single day under every single successive government, whether those who called for peace or that of the right wing of Benjamin Netanyahu. And ultimately what Hamas has done, I think, with its slaughter of unarmed Israelis is, in my view, as a former activist and negotiator on the Palestinian side, I think that collectively they've thrown away 50 years of gains made by the sacrifice of tens of thousands of Palestinians and others. So, everyone is complicit here, including Western leaders who for the last 20 years have done nothing to push back against Israeli policies, the ones that we've seen failed so horrifically and so tragically on the 7th October. These same Western leaders today basically are showing themselves as complicit in the collapse of the rules-based international order that should protect civilians under attack, wherever they are.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the international community. Do you think that, just finally, if you would, do you think that the Americans have basically been paying lip service to any kind of peace process in the last few years?
In the last 20 years. The Europeans too, sadly. The European Council in 1998 committed itself to Palestinian statehood unconditionally and without necessarily the approval of Israel. Look at where Europe is today. So everyone has lived with this festering situation forever. It's taken Hamas with, this brutal, horrific approach to sort of claim leadership of Palestinians in ways that I and many other Palestinians totally abhor and reject. But we're in a moment of what I think of as ethno-tribalism. It's sort of two tribes lining up on every side, not just in Palestine and Israel, but across the world, oblivious to, the very genuine human suffering on the other side, as if we're fighting only for our tribe. And what Western leaders do and say right now, whether it's Ursula von der Leyen in the European Commission or Joe Biden in the USA, I fear is accelerating the collapse of our international order as we've known it since 1945, with its liberal humanitarian values and rules. This is falling apart. Many things have led to this, Russia and Ukraine. This moment, I think, is an inflection point where, from here on, we all go to somewhere much, much darker. But we're doing this in full sight and plain view of liberals and progressives and people who regard themselves as humanists on either side. And this is tragic to all those Palestinians and Israelis who share values and who care for each other's families and lives.
Yeah, well, Yezid, it's really interesting to talk to you, and I appreciate your contribution on this program. Thank you very much.